Still waiting.
I can't see. Okay.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. And everyone, please welcome Behaviour Analysis. We'd like to welcome you all to our symposium today, which is paper session number 2, which is on the theme of systems and culture. We have 4 papers to bring you today, starting with Dr. BUDZISKA, who will talk about ABA treatment and certification model of the Institute for Child Development in Gdansk in Poland. Hopefully our second presenter will be Ms. ASMAHAN SALEH, who will present on autism, adolescent and sexuality in the Arab world, safeguarding through behavior analysis. I will be your third presenter today, talking about the evaluation of teachers' attitudes towards the inclusion of students with intellectual and developmental disabilities in the UAE, or the United Arab Emirates. And closing us out this morning, afternoon or evening, depending on where you are, we have Dr. Khawla, who will talk about a comparison of the efficacy of an asynchronous online learning platform and telehealth in asynchronous training for ABA practitioners. So again, welcome all. If you are now familiar with the platform, you will notice that there is a chat section. So please, we welcome you all to share who you are and where you're signing in from today. There's also a questions option at the bottom of your screen, so you can simply click on the questions if you have a question for your speaker. And as the chair of today's symposium, I will make sure to ask those questions at the end of each session. So each presenter has been allocated 15 minutes for their presentation and 5 minutes for a Q&A session. So we look forward to presenting our session today. So our first presenter, as I said, is Dr. BUDZISKA. Dr. BUDZISKA is a creator and a director of the Institute for Child Development in Gdansk for the last 16 years, the only Polish dissemination site of Princeton Child Development Institute, USA. Dr. BUDZISKA runs the ABA courses at the University of Gdansk, and she developed one of 2 BACB approved course sequences in Poland. She has made many national and international contributions to autism intervention, including lectures at several universities and foundations on autism. For example, in countries such as Austria, Slovakia, and Norway. Many times she's presented papers at the Association for Behaviour Analysis International. She's also published many research articles, books, and she's the author of an online ABA course called 15 Minutes for Treatment. So please allow me to introduce you to Dr. BUDZISKA.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for invitation, and it's a big honor to be able to present at this conference. I'm so happy I can share my experience and knowledge. And my focus is, the main focus is how to help kids with ASD. So there are 2 ways. We have to build effective treatment model, and we have to build certification system for teachers. First, effective treatment model. I think my institute is such an example, and we are providing science-based intervention to children with autism for over 15 years. And my institute is the first and the only institution in Poland and in Europe which is a member of Alliance for Scientific Autism Intervention. What is it? ASAI. We are also founding member of this alliance together with 3 other institutions from USA. And our main goal is expanding and dissemination of science-based intervention model from one country to several in Europe and in the world. And why it's so important? Because it's not only that certification to one single person gives us the ability to build good model. We also have to have a good model examples to build a effective treatment for kids with autism. And when we will back to the literature from 1987, where Bear, Wolf, and Riesler wrote, concluded that effectiveness for the future will probably be built primarily on system-wide interventions. So we have to build system-wide interventions to really be able to help children with autism. And we promote an effective system of training and intervention for individuals with autism developed by Dr. Krantz and Dr. McClanahan. They were directors of Princeton Child Development Institute in USA for over 40 years. And the first article, which was, you can read about the system we have in our institute and in other institutions, which are the members of ASAI, is described in JABA in 1993, and you are very welcome to see it. And we are about to publish the next article about what we are doing, so I very hope it will be very soon. Coming back to my institute, you can see few pictures from institute in Gdansk. And our main goal is, of course, very intensive early intervention for children with autism. We have also at the same building, the small kindergarten for typical developing kids, but this is built only for making good transition for children with autism. We have also diagnostic and consultation clinic. We have kids from all over Europe coming to us. And we have teacher training center. What else we do? We have ABA course sequence at the University of Gdansk. We conduct international symposium every year, and we have thousands of attenders from all over Europe because the lectures are in Polish and in English. So this year will be March 24th. You can register it if you are interested. We also conduct a lot of research with Oslo Metropolitan University. You can see our publication on our website. And we have also non-profit project with the University of Technology. We create applications for children with autism for tablets. We are very proud of our outcome because over 50% of kids with autism are able to go to typical school and do not need any help from any teachers after the treatment in our institute. But to prove our outcome, we have done the research, which are about to be published very soon. The outcome for children with autism receiving intensive behavioral intervention and a comparisons controlled study, the first phase. And you can see the authors. The main author is Marta Wójcik. She's our supervisor in our institute, and she's a doctoral she's a doctoral student of Spain ICASET. And we have in this study 16 participants, children with autism, and their age was less than 5 years old. And they got a very intensive ABA intervention around 30 hours a week for every child. And children were assessed at intake and after 14 months of treatment. And we used PEP-R Shopler, and we use Vineland adaptive scale for our assessment. And you can see the results. The blue bar is for the intake, and the red one is after, and the red one is follow-up. And you can see that all our 16 kids did amazing progress after 14 months of the treatment. You can see the bars, almost every red bar goes up. And there are mean scores. So the mean score shows the big difference between intake and after 14 months of the treatment, intensive treatment in our institute. The same you can see Vineland adaptive behavior scale, and the same blue bar is for the intake, and red bar is follow up after 14 months of intensive behavioral treatment, and mean scores at the intake and follow up. And these are our points. You can see a number. So what is really, even us were surprised, but we see that there is the difference in 26 points in IQ after 14 months of the treatment. So this is really amazing progress. And 24 points in communication skills, 12 points in daily living, 7 points in socialization, and 13 points in composite. So altogether, 15 children who received intensive behavioral treatment made improvements in all assessed areas, and one child did improvement in IQ, but didn't make improvement in composite Vineland adaptive scale. We also provided training courses on ABA based on our ASAI model in Austria and Slovakia. And these are the pictures for supervision we did together. And after our intervention, Sonia Merzel and Katrin Kertes, they made evaluation study of low intensity ABA treatment. And the treatment was also, research were based also on 15 children group receiving ABA, but it was at least 5 hours treatment a week or 8 hours, but it was low intensity ABA treatment. And they had control group, which were 15 children receiving treatment as usual, so different kind of treatment. And of course, these were kids with autism, preschoolers, and they were assessing kids at the baseline, 7 months follow-up and 14 months follow-up. So very similar what we did. So we did at the intake and after 14 months. And they were measured the same intelligence, language, adaptive behavior scale, but also they were measuring behavior problem and level of parent stress and satisfaction. They used different kind of tests during their study, during the research. And you can see that even low intensity treatment gave the results in the points you can see in communication, daily living, and socialization. But also what is very important, they saw decreasing of problem behaviors. So they were counting and assessing problem behaviors, and after 14 months there was really, we saw the decrease of problem behaviors. And they evaluated the training course. The training course was evaluated by parents and ABA therapists, and they assessed child progress, if the therapy is ideal for children with autism, and if they will recommend the treatment. And as you see, parents, they were very satisfied or satisfied with the course. They think that it was very close to ideal, and they will recommend. Most of the parents will recommend. The same with ABA therapists. They were also very satisfied or satisfied. They think it was ideal course for children with autism, and they will recommend the course to other kids with autism, which was very nice data. So what is summary? Low intensity ABA treatment in everyday care can lead to positive effects and developmental progress, even it's so low intensive. We are very happy about high acceptance of ABA treatment by parents and therapists. And of course, they were talking about need for support for parents to reduce the level of parental stress, and they noticed need for more hours of therapy and need for more inclusion parents into the treatment because it was very low intensity. So the conclusion is that our model is supportive for building the teaching skill of effective autism interventions. So we were talking about effective treatment model. Now we are talking about certification system for teachers, which has to be built in Europe. So we built the certification system in Poland, which is based on two very important things. One is postgraduate study, and the second is a training, practical training. And postgraduate studies, it's 330 hours, 3 semesters. And practical paths can be different. It can be teacher for children with autism, teacher of child in preschool, psychologists, special educationals, and speech therapists. And practical training, it's one very week, very intensive training in the center, which is chosen by a student, by the participant. Then it has to be 1,000 hours of documented supervised treatment, work under the supervision. And at the end of every practical training, we do professional evaluation, which is based on our professional evaluation. It's 7-scale evaluation, which develops, helps to develop the skills. And the evaluation protocol is also the training protocol used during hands-on training and the didactic training. So the therapists are very familiar with the questions and all the areas which are assessed. And at the end, there is an exam which is organized twice a year. We also have created a tool course, which is in both languages, Polish and English. And I have to say that English, the course was has a very good scores, better in English than in Polish, which is very interesting. And we have in this course 33 episodes. So if you are interested, you can find the course 15 minutes for treatment on Udemy, and you can see 33 episodes. And I would like you to hear what the experts are saying about the course.
The Institute for Child Development achieves a high level of treatment success for many reasons. Intervention is based on the science of applied behavior analysis, and procedures are based on research.
The courses that are offered by IWRD that you can take are going to help you be able to systematically improve the lives of children with autism because they're based on science and they have been proven to produce outcomes.
These lessons, based on sound research and excellent programming, will help you build new skills for young people with autism.
IWRD is one of the best programs in the world, and the courses you will take with them will enable you to change the lives of others as well.
So just the short summary what the courses are. And if you are very interested in the model we propose, you can see the course and 33 episodes, but also you can go to our webpage, which will be at the end of the presentation, and see how many publications we have already done, and new articles will be about to publish. And if you are interested, you can read it because mostly these publications are in English. So I would like just to summarize, this is our homepage, that this is very important to create good model and to be based on the good model to build intervention programs, because it's not enough to be only certificated, but also when you have a good model, you have to remember to certificate your therapists. So it has to go parallel to increase the skills of the teachers, but also to remember the whole system you built for kids with autism is very, very important. I hope I showed you that this is also very effective, what we are doing in Poland, and what is based on the treatment based on PCDI model developed by Krantz and McClanahan in 1993, and which was disseminated to many other institutions. We have also dissemination sites in Poland. There are 9 different places in Poland which use the same model. So if you're interested, you can see my email address. Please write to me. If you're interested in our course, you can find it on Udemy. And I hope you liked what I showed you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Budzinska, and thank you for addressing the question that was posed to you in the chat about whether the study was government funded or was it funded by the families, and you clarified that it was actually funded. Do you want to clarify, Dr. Anna?
Yes, the study which were done in Poland, I founded by my institute, but study which I showed in Austria, they were funded, I think, European Union, because Austria were looking for fundings and they were applying for fundings in European Union. So we were just invited to be the partner in this project.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think we have time for one more question. So please feel free, if anyone has a question, pop it in the chat or in that questions tab at the end of your screen. I do have a question though. You had on one of your slides, Dr. Budzinska, that ABA therapy is liked by therapists and parents, but I was just curious about teachers in Poland. What is their attitude towards ABA-based therapy?
I think that I will surprise you, because this is really a very big interest of ABA in Poland. There are many teachers which we already trained in ABA during our courses or during our study. This is more than 1,000 people who are interested in ABA. So there are many places who start ABA programs in Poland, and they use also, they try to replicate the model we created in Gdansk, which is supervised by people from USA. So this is really full of people interested in this model. And when we organize our symposium, there are thousands of attenders, which we are very proud of.
That's absolutely fantastic. So congratulations to you and everyone that you're working with on the wonderful work that you're doing. I look forward to checking out all those references. Could I ask you please, Dr. Budzinska, to stop sharing your slides so that our next speaker can start sharing hers?
Of course.
So thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Budzinska. That was an absolutely fantastic
Thank you for invitation. It was great to be together with you, and good luck for other presenters.
Thank you so much. Okay, so our next speaker, Ms. ASMAHAN, if you want to start sharing your slides, and while you're doing that, I will introduce you, if that's okay. So our next speaker
so this is Chris. We're gonna proxy her through Zoom. It's gonna be a little bit weird, just to let you know, but so she won't be able to hear you, but I'll cue her when you're ready. Okay.
We're ready. Okay, I'll just introduce her and then we'll be ready to go, if that's okay, Chris.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so as you could hear, we're experiencing a small bit of technical difficulties getting ASMAHAN to join us today. However, we're working it out, and we thank you for your flexibility and your patience. So I'm just going to introduce her. She cannot hear me, so I will just be singing her praises while she waits patiently. So Ms. ASMAHAN is a board-certified behavior analyst and a doctoral researcher. Her thesis focused on sexual health education and safeguarding procedures with an emphasis on cultural considerations for the Arab world. ASMAHAN adolescents with varying forms of behavioral support needs and diagnoses of the Association of Behaviour Analysis in Lebanon, and she's the co-author of a counselling children's book called The Day the World Went Boom. She has a special interest in working with adolescents on functional and vocational programs, community integration, as well as parent training. So Chris, over to Miss ASMAHAN now. Thank you so much for your help.
Hi, hello. Thank you for that introduction. My name is ASMAHAN. I'm not going to introduce myself again. I'm going to go straight into my topic of research in my presentation. So I am a third-year PhD student working with Dr. Karola Dillenburger. The title of my thesis is Autism, Adolescent, and Sexuality in the Arab World. I know there's a lot of factors coming in here, and all of them have their nuances. I'm looking specifically at safeguarding procedures through the use of behavior analytic procedures. Okay, so I'm just going to go over the rationale, how I got here, how I got myself into this topic, and a little bit about the research that I've already done. And then I'm going to go straight into the intervention that I have applied with. I'm working with 6 participants. I'm going to be sharing data from 5 of them. So how I got here, as an Arab BCBA to start with, I was faced with that had adolescents, okay, that had different diagnoses. Some of them were diagnosed with autism, some of them were diagnosed with intellectual disabilities, but they were all in or around the age of puberty. And as a BCBA, having had freshly graduated, almost a year into it, the code of ethics was still very fresh in my mind, and I realized that if I am dealing with children around adolescents around puberty that had different kinds of programs that needed to be worked on, I needed to make sure that I was practicing within my scope of competence, and I was not competent in dealing with the specific issues that arise with the puberty age or with adolescents. And there was a barrier to that because there was very limited research, as I later saw through my systematic literature review. Also, according to the Code of Ethics, I needed to be culturally responsive. So as much as I wanted to go ahead and find a sexual health education program that was based in, there's excellent ones in the West, but they are based on research there. And I was very well aware that our culture did not apply to the same standards and rules and laws and values. And I had to provide effective treatment to these students that were under my care. So I went around looking for help, looking for people who would be able to guide me. And I found that a big part of these consultations that I was seeking, I had to explain our culture so that I can get effective, so I can give effective services. Just to let you know a little bit about what makes the Arab culture stand out, you might find some similarities with other cultures, I'm sure other specific families that some people might work with. So the family structure usually in the Arab world, and here I'm talking about 22 countries that make up the Arab world. The family structure is usually hierarchical. Families live very close by, if not within the same house. It's very common to find 2 or 3 generations living under the same household or around each other. The culture is largely dependent on outside help for child care, having live-in help. That's main responsibility is the children, and the house is very common. Actually, one of the few numbers that I found in 2017, 95% of children in the UAE, which is one of the Arab countries, 95% of them were under the care of that live-in help. And almost every upper and middle class family in Saudi Arabia, which is another Arab country, were also under, going through the same kind of child rearing practices, if we can call them that. We have very conservative values and customs. And other than family values, I'm also talking here about the laws that most countries apply. For example, homosexuality or any kind of gender fluidity by law is still banned in 19 out of the 22 countries that make up the Arab world. we need to take that into consideration when we're considering what we're teaching the children, to make sure that we are setting them up for whatever culture they participate in. So it's illegal and punishable by law. So that is something to take into consideration when talking about sexual health education program. Cohabitation, so any kind of sexual relationship outside of marriage is also prohibited. The law also reinstates that. We have a lot of censoring, so it's evident in a lot of things. We have a lot of censoring of our music, our movies, to kind of protect our children. So there is that safeguarding that's already embedded, but we really need to make sure that as professionals, we are considerate of what the culture, what the customs in each country are stating. Also, another thing is that sex segregation in 20 out of the 22 countries, sex segregation in public schools, that's what I mean, not in private schools, obviously, but public schools are separated by gender in 20 out of 22 Arab countries. So this is something else that played a big part in the sexual health education programs that we can or cannot apply. Just a quick review of the literature review that I did. My main question is how parents and professionals view sexual health education. Out of the 2,244 articles that I found, only 5, and I also included research in the Arabic language because it's a language that I speak and read very well. So I was able to include research from that. Only 5 were based on the Arab culture, or were directed towards Arab parents and professionals. So that really stood out, and that I had seen that in my professional experience, but also with a very rigorous literature review. And all except for one of these studies fell under the category where the questions directed to the parents were still discussing attitudes. How do you feel about sexual health education program? Would you apply? Would you not apply? Versus the others that were categorized differently, but the others were exploring more the quality. With these 4 studies that were based in the Arab world, we were still discussing the existence, which made sense, obviously, from what I had also seen as a professional. I then went on to see what's happening, why, what are the parents' preferences, what can we do to move forward? So I did a survey that included 56 parents and professionals also. One thing that I did not expect is I provided the questions and options to answer in Arabic and English. Everyone preferred Arabic, and considering that the sexual health education programs that are out there and that are published or that are available, none of them is in the Arabic language. And yet more than 50% almost, had a preference for Arabic language. So that really spoke to me, and that directed my research and how I was presenting it. 6% of the participants only reported having effective intervention for maladaptive sexual behavior that they might come across. 89% of them were concerned, and that was in line with another research. So I took a lot of my questions from a research done by Dr. Sorstein, and she had asked some of the same questions, and I found that they're in line. So we all have the same concerns. Obviously, adolescence is adolescence regardless of our culture. We all face the same challenges, and 89% of parents were concerned about this topic. So it's not that they are not, it's not that they weren't facing that issue or that this doesn't happen in the Arab world. It does, but only 58% of them actually felt prepared, and 6 had an effective intervention. The most important topics that parents and professionals felt that needed to be discussed were privacy skills and personal protection, which again is in line with what us as professionals would be concerned about. So what did I do about it? I recruited 6 families that were already dealing with inappropriate sexual behavior. And I want to clarify something. When we mean inappropriate sexual behavior, I'm talking about any kind of sexual behavior that is happening in a location, so in a public location, in a location where it should not be happening, or with another person that did not consent to that. So, for example, masturbation in a public place, undressing in a public place, getting too close or attempting to touch someone that has not given consent to that. These would fall under inappropriate sexual behavior. Otherwise, I don't believe there's anything as inappropriate. It's just the time and the location. So what I did is that I visited an intervention that is referred to as behavioral activation. It's based on cognitive behavioral therapy. It was originally introduced in 1970 as a treatment for depression for typically developing individuals, adults. And then from there, it has a very large research base, and it is based a lot on what we use in behavior analysis. The reason why I chose it is because I have found that, first of all, it's based on the strategies that I was already familiar with as a BCBA. And second of all, it's highly adaptable. As we will see through the examples that I will provide, we can really mend it to what the specific case that we have in front of us, which is the essence of being a behavior analyst, right? Single subject. So I found that it was highly adaptable and applicable to a range of the abilities of the students that we're working with, what capacities they have, and B, the different families that we have, the different values, different traditions, and the different preferences. So it's adaptable in many ways. What we're doing is what this intervention does is that it uses we use behavioral activation to increase any alternative behavior to the sexual behavior that we are trying to stop until the child reaches a safe and appropriate location. So we are activating the behaviors, as the name states. We're activating the alternative behaviors to that sexual behavior that's happening in inappropriate locations. The way that I did it, although at some point I was in the same country as some of the participants, but I insisted to stay doing this through online meetings, just to be able to test out its efficacy also through distant learning. So we did synchronous online meetings, trainings, and the follow-up, everything, including the data collection, which was the most challenging part. The first step of behavioral activation is activity monitoring, also called daily monitoring. As a behavioral analyst, I was mostly familiar with this as a preference assessment. I've actually had to conduct preference assessment to get this step done. But this is what it looks like. As you can see, the different examples done by different students with different abilities. So one student was able to write down his activities, and what we're doing is that we're looking at what a typical day looks like for that student before we started facing that problem behavior that we're targeting. So what would a day look like? What does the parent, what does the child, or what does the team view as missing from this child's daily activity? What are his preferred activities? What does he like to do that, you know, the problem behavior is acting as a barrier for? With some students that have the capacity to talk to us a little bit more about their values, I did ask them, you know, what do you value as a person? What are some of the goals that you're working towards? Otherwise, I've had to ask parents, what do you value for your child? What are some of the goals that you're working on for your child? To have a list, as you can see from the examples, of preferred activities or activities that are important for that child that's dealing with this behavior. Second step is putting it into a schedule. And as we can see, it really looks different. For the first picture of the participant up, it was just pictures of him doing the activity, not just stock images. And for the other one, the other student, the team working with him preferred to have an hourly schedule that's written up in text because reading was already acquired. So we schedule it in. And of course, as a behavior analyst, we start thinning and thickening the schedule of preferred activities to activities that are seen more functional or less preferred for the child. And it looked different for every participant, but the objective was always the same, to put a schedule that is meaningful and preferred, and that the child is able to engage in, the child has the ability to engage in. Where we found that there were some missing skills, this is where skills training came in. And again, all of these are based on are what behavioral activation already entails. And it was interesting to see that in other contexts. It was interesting to see that in the context of depression. But sometimes we really found that there's a skill that's missing. Even if I go through the whole schedule, the child still could not differentiate between what behavior is considered private and what behavior is considered public. Or in the case of the second example, what is a private place? Which places are private? I don't understand what you mean. So for the first picture here, with this child specifically, we just had to teach him that it was okay for you to engage in this behavior. He had been told otherwise by his parents. So it was just blocking and stopping and making sure he doesn't even touch anything. So we had to first of all let him know that it's okay for you to do that. So we used a visual. With the second child, we had to teach him what public and private means. The fourth step is contingency management. Again, very familiar for a lot of behavior analysts. And what I like to do about this step is to make sure that I'm not introducing something new, because I'm coming in with to deal with a specific problem. So if the child is already using a token economy, I go for that. If the child is not, so with the example that I provided, sorry, one of the pictures is flipped because this is how I had received it by email. This is just a first then contingency. First, you are with your therapist, you finish your work, then you have time where you are alone in your bedroom, and then you can engage in whatever you want to engage in. So it can be as simple as this, or it can be tokens, or it can be socially mediated praise. Some additional strategies that we've had to teach, increasing communication skills and opportunities with parents. I have found that within the culture, it was common practice. It was more easier for the parents, especially considering the lack of research on the topic. I found that communicating with the child or knowing what to say to the child was a challenge for parents. So making sure that the parents and the children, or the therapists and the children, have a good communication route was very important. Teaching private versus discrimination between private behavior and public behavior, private setting and public setting, and teaching social skills. So one of the other common practices is having, a separated segregated events, parties, gatherings. So we found that with most of the participants actually being with members of the opposite sex was new, unfamiliar. So we had to teach the differences between how you can handle these situations. The results were positive. I'm going to talk about the second trend, but with 3 of the participants, as soon as we started the intervention, as soon as we clarified what is the schedule that we want the child to follow in order to tolerate that delay to get to a private location or an appropriate time, the results were an almost immediate decrease in the problem behavior that we were trying to decrease. With the first family, we were also taking data on whether or not that private time was increasing otherwise, to make sure that he did have that alternative, that replacement. So with 3 of the participants, the results were positive towards what we're looking for. The second trend is what stood out the most to me. There are 3 of the participants, but I only included 2. What happened is that the parents were a little bit more hesitant, as would a conservative family, or a family that has not had. So I just need to say that only 1 of the 22 countries in the Arab world actually includes sexual health education as part of their curriculum. Otherwise, it's not mandated at all, or it's not available. So these parents, these children have never been talked to about this. It's not something that they're familiar with in terms of language. It's not within their repertoire to discuss this with other people. So I was very understanding that some families were hesitant. And what they prefer to do is find other ways around it. So I don't want to talk about sexual health. I don't want to talk about what's acceptable in private and what the child can do and how can I teach him the appropriate steps in order to, be comfortable. So they just wanted to work their way around it, and that looked very different. So for one family, one of the specific triggers was, the TV. As long as he was watching TV, he was trying to masturbate, whether he was in the living room or elsewhere. So they're like, I just want to stop the TV. That's all I want to do. I don't want to tell him that he can go to his room and that this is a private place where he can undress. I just want to stop the TV. That will stop the public masturbation. So we tried that. I was not part of this because I did not really want to go for an abstinence-only approach. That was not part of my beliefs that this would work, but this is what the parents chose, and they went ahead with that. With the second family, what happened is that the child was told that that females and males look the same. They have the same. He was not told anything. He was just told that he had asked his parents, and they said that their genitals are exactly the same. There's no difference. The girls look like the boys. Just forget about it. And as again, it's very understandable because the parents did not have the proper guidance. So that was the first answer that they had. And when they were offered different suggestions to go about this, they did not feel very comfortable because, again, it's not part of what they are used to. And what happened is that, as you can see, the first intervention, or if we can even call it that, the behavior remained and then it peaked at some point. So with the first family, we were the child where we blocked away the screen, he went to find books that had similar images as what he was watching. When they also took away the books to stop that public sexual behavior, he went ahead into his sister's room. So that really showed the parents that the only way, to deal with this is to go through it. We can't really go around it, as much as it's important to go through it and tell him this is okay, this is not okay. And once that peak happened, they came back and we did apply the sexual health education program as presented, and then we saw the behavior decrease. Same thing with the other child. We went ahead and he was told, the child that was told that men and women look the same. He was not given accurate information by the parents. And what happened is that he started to undress his cousins, or asking them to undress, just because he knew that there was something off and he wanted to find answers for himself. And as soon as the parents found out and they found that there's a peak there, they came back and we did apply the intervention, where we sat him down and we were very open and honest about everything, of course, within the realm of what is culturally appropriate. So I had to go back and forth for a few times with the family to make sure that whatever they're presented, I did not find something that was ready to go. We had to make it ourselves. So what
Ms.
I took
ASMAHAN,
away.
can you hear me? Sorry, I just need you to wrap up. It's just 1 minute left, if that's okay.
Okay, I'm done. It's just a complete wrap. I just wanted to say that my takeaway from being in this field of research is the importance of cultural considerations, especially in fields that are under research, like sexual health education, and that have such a high social validity. They're very important in order to safeguard children. As the examples that I gave, these children were put in situations that are not very that are not okay for them to be put in. It was against what the families wanted, or what I wanted as a therapist. So if there are any questions, I would love to answer them, but otherwise I'm just going to put up the references here of some of the important research that I spoke about.
Thank you so much, ASMAHAN. I really appreciate your flexibility and patience in getting you connected today. We're so glad. We could listen to you for hours. It's such an interesting topic. If I could ask, maybe if you pop your email address in the chat, so that those who wish to get a copy of your slides, if you're happy to share, you could maybe reach out to them there. If I could ask you to stop sharing, so that me, the next presenter, can get my slides ready. And while I'm doing that, if you could just, there was a question in the chat from Dr. Koldas about if we want to replicate the steps in your intervention, how can we do that? How can we access that? You can feel free if you're still able to talk. Yes. Thank you, Professor Khawla.
Of course. So maybe they can get in touch and I can share the specific procedures that I went through, the training. There was a training that I did for the parents and the therapists, and then the follow-up procedures. I would gladly share that.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ms. ASMAHAN. Can you please clarify or confirm that you can see my screen, ASMAHAN? I believe you can. Okay, perfect. Thank you, ASMAHAN. Thank you, Chris. There's another question in the chat, and maybe if you're happy to do so, Ms. ASMAHAN, you could address Dr. Koldas's question in the chat as well, so that we can all hear your answer just while I get started, because I want to make sure that we have time for Dr. Koldas's.
How can I access the study? My other question was that a family not agreed with the pictures you used. Yes, definitely.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. SALEH. Thank you, Ms. SALEH. Thank you. Okay, so let's get started on my presentation, if that's okay. So thank you all again. Thank you, Dr. Dunovi. Thank you, Professor Karola, and all the organization team for organizing this wonderful virtual conference. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm loving these virtual conferences that people all over the world can come together and share their research and learn from others' research. And I particularly loved the theme of this conference, which is Applied Behavior Analysis, Meaningful Inclusion in a Changing World. And that particularly spoke to me because I just recently worked, and I'm continuing to work on a study looking at inclusion in the UAE, or the United Arab Emirates. So thank you again. And today is a really nice day to be presenting about data collected in the UAE, because it's the UAE's birthday. So today is the 51st National Day of the UAE. So I'm feeling quite nice. It's great that I can celebrate today's National Day by presenting research data that was collected in the UAE with UAE teachers. So by ways of an introduction, because I was the chair of the symposium, my name is Michelle Kelly. I'm Irish. You might be able to tell from the accent. However, I do no longer live in Ireland. I've actually lived in the Middle East now for 10 years, 2 years in Saudi Arabia, and the past 8 years in the United Arab Emirates. I'm an associate professor in the Counselling, Special Education and Neuroscience Division at Emirates College for Advanced Education, which is based here in Abu Dhabi in the UAE. I'm a chartered psychologist with the Psychological Society of Ireland. I'm a BCBAD, and I also have a diploma in TEFL. I'd like to acknowledge my research team for this particular study that I'm presenting today, Dr. Bryan Roche, some of you who may know, who's based, of course, in Ireland, Dr. Ian Tyndall, who's in the UK, and my co-researcher here in the UAE, Ms. Khawla Barley, who's the head of initiatives at Special Olympics. I'd also like to acknowledge our funding entity. The study was funded by Emirates College for Advanced Education, so it was an internal grant, and also we got research, which is the operational arm of the Ministry of Education here in UAE, to run this study. I've popped the link into the chat, but also for those of you who prefer, you can take out, so you'll be able to find my slides and also a list of my references at this link. So let me bring you, it's only 15 minutes, so it's only really a snapshot of the study, and it is a work in progress. So please know that we are still analysing this data, and I would be happy to share an eventual publication, inshallah, with all of you once it is out there in a peer-reviewed journal. Recently, Russell et al. Published a systematic review of 13 studies looking at educator attitudes towards the inclusion of students with autism in mainstream education. And this is a fantastic read, and the QR code is on the screen there for you to follow to take you to that systematic review. The link is also in my resources, and it's a wonderful read, and really my research kind of stemmed a lot from this. And just to introduce inclusion in mainstream education, I'm sure many of you are familiar with this, but again, just to kind of situate it or contextualize the study, of course, we know as per the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, every child has a right to education free from discrimination. According to UNESCO, inclusion and equity should be acknowledged as underlying principles, and it does ultimately benefit all children, not just children with special needs, but all children, as it focuses on responding to diverse needs and promotes a fairer, more equitable society. However, you know, inclusive education is not particularly easy for a lot of teachers, and it does continue to be problematic, not for all, but for some educators. But of course, teachers do play such a significant, crucial role in the practice of inclusive education, and their attitude towards inclusion is a key component. And that was really the topic of the study that I'm presenting today. And inclusive education can be one of the most challenging issues for teachers. So now, once we contextualize it within the framework of the United Arab Emirates, the MOE, the Ministry of Education, state that that one of the goals is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. So the intention is there from the UAE. His Highness Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan, who's the president of the UAE, he also talked about the philosophy of inclusive education, and you know, ultimately this led to the federal law of 29/2006 regarding the rights of individuals with special needs. And I should say, sometimes you'll hear me refer to students with special needs as students of determination. That is the term that has been adopted here in the UAE. This law, the federal law, stipulates that special needs in themselves are not a reason for a child not being admitted into a school. So every child, again, has the right to an education, whether it's public or private schooling. So coming back to that Russell et al. Systematic review, they looked at different factors influencing inclusion. There were a number of factors, but the two that I'm just going to highlight today as they are most relevant to my particular study is the teacher experience and training. Now, they did find mixed evidence. Some studies found that this did impact, some looked at or found that it did not. And again, that was something we wanted to investigate. Is this the case with teachers teaching in the UAE? And also various personal factors such as gender, what type of teacher they are, their own self-efficacy. They found no significant relationship between gender, and they found that individuals aged 20 to 30 were found to be more accepting of the inclusion of students. And this may not perhaps come as a surprise to many of you. And again, this is something we wanted to investigate with teachers in the UAE. So as I said, the purpose was to look at attitudes of teacher, and we actually paired up with the Special Olympics, who had designed or who were working with an ABA provider called Applied and Behavioral Training Institute to provide a training to teachers. It's called the Unified Education. And Special Olympics have been doing such amazing things here in the UAE. They have unified education, unified healthcare, unified community partners. They have different unified training programs which promotes inclusion of people self-determination in all sectors of life. And obviously the focus of this was within education. And the goal of this study was to evaluate this training program. Just to give you an idea, and I'm keeping an eye on time, that clock is ticking fast. The Unified Education Training, it's 3 sessions across 6 hours. So it's a 1-day training, and it's very much rooted in acceptance and commitment. It's around compassionate inclusion, what is inclusion, the benefits, the barriers to inclusion, etc. Session 2 then focuses really on those practical take-home strategies for teachers and breaks down those ABA strategies that you can see on your screen, as does session 3. In terms of our research questions, we wanted to look at the effects of training on the implicit attitudes and the explicit. So we can ask teachers, what are your feelings towards having students of determination in your classroom? But given the sensitive nature of this, there's a high expectation and maybe, a bit of pressure on teachers to indicate that they're fully happy, they're fully willing, they're fully able. But what about the implicit attitudes as measured by an implicit assessment? We also want to look, did these vary by those personal factors that I just mentioned? Do they correlate pre and post training? So looking at, is what they're saying actually their attitude? So do they correlate? And also the social validity. Now, of course, I do not have time for all of these. I'm happy for any of you to contact me for more details later on, but just a quick snapshot of the results that we did obtain. We had 163 teachers go through this, predominantly female. As you can see, there was a wide range of grade levels from kindergarten all the way up to cycle 3, which is up to 12 years of age. The age group predominantly in the 30 to 39, 40 to 49 age groups. In terms of our data collection, it was a 2-part study. We had an online bilingual survey. That's why I was interested to ASMAHAN when she was talking about the language. What we've learned is rather than offering an English survey and an Arabic survey, we're now offering bilingual. That seems to be the preference here. So we had an online bilingual survey that captured those demographics and the measures of explicit attitudes. And then the second part was using the FAST, the Function Acquisition Speed Test. And that was, of course, developed by Dr. Bryan Roche, who is a co-investigator on this study. And with the FAST, we could not offer it bilingually given the nature of the test. So they were given the option to do it in English or in Irish or Arabic, which measures the implicit attitudes. So the FAST, for those of you who are not familiar, I have put some references in that link, so you can follow there to learn more about Dr. Bryan Roche's assessment. But it calculates the speed and the accuracy, so we're looking at fluency, indicating the rate of learning of stereotype consistent or stereotype inconsistent. So it compares these rates. So for example, if your learning history as a teacher is that students with intellectual and developmental disabilities are bad or they have a negative connotation, then this results in a negative or the presence of a bias or a negative attitude. And similarly, if you relate it to positive traits like good, then they'll have a more favorable view. And the FAST measures those relations to compare those rates to see what the bias or the attitudes are towards students with special needs. So in terms of the implicit attitudes, this is still in progress. So Dr. Bryan Roche and his lovely research assistant, Niamh, are diligently working away on those results. But we're having a problem, and the problem is this, and it's an interesting one. So Bryan Roche, formerly, he was running this assessment very much as an experimental test in a lab, on a computer, one at a time, free from distraction. This was the first time the FAST had ever been used on a mobile phone. So we had decided that we were going to have the teachers complete the FAST on a mobile device, but also in a group setting. Now, I could see, even being there, that this was problematic because, of course, you had teachers next to each other looking over. There was a little bit more distraction and they weren't really able to focus on the learning task. So lesson learned. So we're really going to treat this like a pilot and have a follow-up where we do control the environment and have the teachers where they're able to focus and they're free of distraction. So the data has been busy, and Dr. Roche is busily trying to tease out that data for use for the follow-up study. The explicit attitudes, this is where they indicated, am I ready to assist students of determination? Am I willing to assist? Am I able to assist? And am I happy to assist? Again, it's not surprising that in that pre-training, they're all saying, yes, I'm ready. Yes, I'm willing. Yes, I'm able. And yes, I'm happy. This is not a great surprise. So whilst we did see an increase from pre-training to post-training, it's not particularly statistically significant across all the 4 dimensions. But again, this was something that we did expect. And again, you'll see a fall out there in the count of the number of teachers that replied pre and post. And that's, of course, that by the end of the training, they were like, I'm finished, I'm good, I want to go home. So we did get a bit of a dropout in those post-training measures as well. In terms of the social validity, and I'm going to give myself a 1-minute warning here, in terms of the social validity, it was largely positive. And I should say, as you can see on the screen, this is how the question was presented to the participants. So it was in English and in Arabic. So would you recommend this training? The vast in your opinion, were the objectives important for teachers? Again, how would you rate the importance? All of the participants said very important or important. No one indicated that it was not important. And then some of these have been back translated from the Arabic comments. But in terms of what aspects did they most enjoy? Again, overwhelmingly positive, but a lot coming through about the ABA strategies, the methods of reinforcement, the fact that this was engaging and fun and learning how to reinforce. So largely positive. And then aspects that were most helpful, again, all of those, visual analysis, learning how to integrate students, ABC method. You can see ABC popping up time and time again. This is just a snapshot. We had about 100 comments for each question. But you'll see at the end of this slide, repeating the training once every month. Now, that seems like a lot, but perhaps it does indicate that there is a need, a demand, a desire for more training on inclusion and the use of evidence-based practices. So I'm finishing up now. And please, if you do have any questions, please do feel free to pop them in the chat. Sorry, I've lost my screen. Here we go. So just a couple of quick points. I think one thing that we've learned from looking at all these unified trainings by the Special Olympics is that it's really important that healthcare providers, parents, teachers, community partners are all made to feel safe and given a safe space to share their challenging experience, to not really feel that pressure to be like, everything's okay, it's easy, there's no problems, because it's not. We know in a lot of cases it's not easy. So really giving and creating a safe space for these professionals, for these members of the community to be able to share the difficulties that they're having. Also, we've obviously learned a lot from the limitations regarding how to actually run the fast. Lesson learned that doing it on mobile phones in large groups is just not the best way to collect data. So we do need that controlled environment. So that's the way we'll be doing things going forward. And again, coming from that social validity data, that there is a demand here in the UAE for more trainings about inclusion and specifically about the evidence-based strategies. Again, here's that QR code. The link is in the chat. That will take you to these slides and to the references. Also, there's my email address, which I'll pop into the chat also. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask them now. Thank you, Dr. Dunavi. Thank you, Professor Karola. I have stopped sharing. So Dr. Koldas, you're free to share your slides now. I'll just give everyone 30 seconds in case anyone does have a question. I do realize I absolutely sprinted through that. Thank you, Dr. BUDZISKA.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so Dr. Koldas, oh yeah, here, it's coming through now. Thank you. So it doesn't appear that there's any questions. If you do have any follow-up questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. Of course, my email address is in the chat. So whilst Dr. Koldas puts her slides into presenter view, I'm just going to introduce her. So I'm just going to come out of that. So let me introduce Dr. Koldas. So Meryl Koldas is a board-certified behavior analyst who has been working in the field for over 10 years across Turkey, North Wales, and Northern Ireland. Her Master of Science in Applied Behavior Analysis at Bangor University, North Wales. And then she's recently completed her PhD in Behavior Analysis from Queen's University of Belfast. So massive congratulations, Dr. Koldas. Her PhD research projects verbal behavior training using asynchronous and telehealth modalities to train practitioners working with individuals with autism spectrum disorder and other developmental disabilities. Dr. Kuldus is one of the recipients of the SABA International Developmental Grant 2022. Massive congratulations on that. That's such a massive achievement. The project focused on the implementation of the VB approach procedures by special education teachers in public school settings in Turkey. So your slides look good, Dr. Kuldus. We cannot see you, but can we hear you?
Yes, I can hear you and see everything perfectly.
So Morale, do you want to just check that you're unmuted? Oh, you can see her? Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Can you also hear
her?
me?
Because I can neither see nor hear. Oh, yes, you can. Okay, I don't know why I can't. Oh, okay. I apologize. I cannot hear you, Dr. Kuldus, but off you go.
All right, then I'm starting. It's everyone set up. And first, I would like to say welcome to today, as I am student of Center of Behaviour Analysis, QUB. I am also currently in Belfast, just 100 meters from the school. So welcome, everybody. I will be presenting one of my PhD research that is comparison the efficacy of online learning platform and telehealth training for ABA practitioners. And I'm under supervision of Dr. Catherine Starey. First, I would like to, actually, Dr. Kelly did it. I'm from Turkey and I just finished my PhD in QUB. So, as you see, this handsome guy, Skinner, I love him. And he's also a very genius individual. Skinner founded and developed verbal behavior, and he defined verbal behavior as behavior reinforced through the mediation of other persons. Verbal behavior-based language and communication methods to teach individuals with autism and other language delays have generally covered in the combination of some verbal operands. Before I move forward to verbal operands and explain about it, we are here in this conference on Friday morning, still actually noon. I hope everyone have their coffee and tea. And you know, tea is the most loud hot beverage in the world. Do you have any guess which country is the most consumption according to latest statistic in terms of tea, of course? Who is consuming tea the most? If Dr. Kelly, if you see the chat, can you tell me their guess? Otherwise, I will forward because we have limited time.
Yes, of course I will. Dr. Kuldus, no answers coming through quite yet, but I'll let you know if there are any. Thank you.
All right. So I'm moving because we have limited time. I can give the prompt or answer at the same time. And Turkey, our home country, has the highest per capita consumption of tea in the world, and then Ireland, as you can see from this map, and then UK. So I hope everyone has their preferred coffee or tea in this morning to listen us very carefully. So based on varied functional relation between the behavior and the controlling variables, Skinner developed 7 verbal operands that are meant, text, echoic, interverbal, textual transcription, and copying and text. So I would like to make my point clear for the audience, because sometimes, you know, the verbal operands and verbal behavior are getting confusing for the people. So, for example, meant is the verbal operand when organism controls a relevant state of deprivation or aversive stimulation. So it is response to specify its own reinforcement. For example, when I say I want tea, or can I get a tea, please? So I get a tea as a reinforcer. I specify my own reinforcer, tea. So text is another verbal operand, and under the evoked by an interaction between the one of the sense of the organism, and then it is like when, for example, when I smell tea, or when I heard the teapot, special teapot is boiling, I say, oh, it is tea. This is the text. And equate this verbal operand under the control of verbal stimuli, in which the response generates sounds patterns similar to the stimulus. For example, when I say tea, and then someone echo me and imitate me what I said exactly, tea. That is the repetition of T function as an echoic behavior. So interverbal refers to verbal response that are under the control of verbal stimuli, and it is also called conversational skill. For example, when someone asks to Turkish people or Irish people, what is your favorite drink? And then they might reply as a tea. But I'm not sure about, maybe Irish people say whiskey or Guinness. I don't know. And so based on verbal behavior, I designed a website, and I would like to give a brief information about my website. How I designed content and verbal behavior website. One, I do an online learning website and curriculum I created from this research, and this link to my website if you would like to check it. And then I created pre and post tests. I also called them VBCAT, consist on the 30 questions, and then each question related to one of the verbal operands or module contents, and I divided them to 3 pre-tests, and every pre-test has 10 questions, and then I created these 7 modules, and the module creation followed the behavioral skill training steps. And when you log on the module, and you can see in the first introduction and then modeling. And when I do a Zoom meeting with the participants for the telehealth sessions, I conducted all the steps of behavioral skill training as well. I created 105 videos overall for this training in the website, and I also provided during the telehealth sessions, and 3 post quizzes after every modules to evaluate their understanding of the verbal behavior modules. And then there's also a minimum passing criteria 4 out of 5. So this is the general view of my modules. First module is ABA, verbal introduction to verbal behavior, and the second one instructional procedure for verbal behavior, and MEN, text, echoic, interverbal, textual, and transcription, including 3 post quizzes, 15 questions. So now I would like to share the video with you. All right. Can you see my screen still? Because I cannot see or hear.
Yes, Dr. Coldis, we
Okay.
can see your screen, we can hear you, but I can't see you anymore, but I can hear you.
Okay. All right. So I continue. This is I will give some information about my methodology briefly. I conduct alternative treatment design. 1 week, one module I conduct with telehealth, and one module I conduct with they just log on the website, and then they take the online modules by themselves. And I have participants from all around the world: Bulgaria, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Brazil, and India. Dependent variables were the number of attempts to meet the post-crisis criteria delivered after each intervention trial, and their VB-CAT pre-test and post-test scores. I'm just running these slides. The results of the participants. This is the VB-CAT result. It means pre and post-test results. And most participants had little knowledge related to verbal behavior, and an increase was observed in dependent variables across all participants from baseline to post-test of the VB-CAT. And the participants also maintained their knowledge after 4 weeks when we finished the study. Also, every time they took the VB-CAT during the pre-test, post-test, and follow-up test, the questions are and answer presented in random order. That is their post-quiz result. You can see the post-quiz attempt only because it is better to understand the participants' post-quiz attempts after each module to compare the efficacy of the learning platform and telehealth session. 3 participants, Battery, Ruby, and Hante, made fewer attempts after training via online verbal behavior website, and other 2 participants, Isla and Bella, they made fewer attempts at mastery following the telehealth session. According to this result, we can say only according to this result, the online verbal behavior website learning platform found to be effective than telehealth modality. I just say something about discussion. This is the first comparison study about online asynchronous training and verbal telehealth synchronous training, and it's also when we see the after social validity questionnaire, they are agreed both of the online modalities are effective for them, and then they would agree to recommend these both modalities to other participants or other people. And when we did the follow-up test, they remained 84%. They keep their knowledge related to verbal behavior. And of course, some individual differences maybe affect their results. For example, introvert or being introvert or extrovert. I know this is not related to behavior analysis. We are just focusing on observable, measurable behaviors, but also in the literature they are pretty much mentioned about this topic as well. So I would like to give some brief introductory information about that. And yeah, that was effective and efficient for them. And thank you. This is my reference list. If you have, please feel free to ask me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Coldis. That was absolutely so interesting and really inspirational for those of us around the world that, where the demand for ABA training is there. And, even ABAI is working towards micro-credentials now. And I think everyone's just seeking out different methods of upskilling practitioners and students. There's a question in the chat from Elif saying, how long did it take you to create those modules?
I would say all total in a year, because I first need to read and understand and eliminate what kind of information I will provide for my participants, practitioner, what they need. Also, as you know, verbal behavior very complex content, and we need to a little bit, translate it to English so that's why it took really a long time. And then I start creating the modules and recording the videos. And it was in the lockdown. And then my housemates helped me at that time. And yeah, in total a year.
Fantastic. And then Professor Dillenburger asks, given that the modules were so successful, are you planning to offer them as a course in the future?
Yeah, I'd like to do that. Actually, I was trying to a little bit expand them and update them. So I would like to do that. Yeah. I'm
Fantastic.
happy to collaborate with her if she wants.
There you go, Professor Dillenburger. A reach out there for collaboration. Fantastic. And I guess given that our theme today is systems and culture, and I do invite Ms. SALEH and Dr. BUDZISKA to join us back if you're still there and able to turn on your cameras and turn on your audio. Given that our theme today was about systems and culture, I'd love to hear from you, Dr. Khawla, about making the modules culturally sensitive, dealing with language and all the rest of it, because that seems to be a common thread across the four of our talks. Do you have anything to say about that, Dr. Khawla, just about the cultural appropriateness of content and how to ensure that, and the language and dealing with language barriers, etc.?
Actually, none of I conducted two research related to that modules, and then one is the big group study. I had 40 participants and 20 control group and 20 experimental group, and I didn't have any issue with them. And this second study I conducted, no one was the native speaker, including me, of course. So that is actually a great contribution to the literature. No one is native speaker, and then we all worked on verbal behavior as someone Skinner developed it as a native speaker, and then we all of us understood it, and I shared my knowledge with them through my online modules and online content, and then everyone understood, and no one report any problem or issues related to language during the telehealth or asynchronous online modules, which is for me great. So which means we can reach more and more individuals working with autism spectrum disorder or other developmental delays, and in this way we can reach more and more individuals with autism. We cannot hear you, Dr. Kelly.
Sorry, I muted myself because I was typing. I apologize. Sorry, I was addressing you, Dr. BUDZISKA, just to see if you had anything to share about your experiences with developing your trainings in that, in terms of making them culturally appropriate, culturally responsive, or issues with translation, etc. Have you faced any issues like that?
Actually, not really. Yes, I was so concentrated. We did it with professionals. We hired professionals to make these episodes. So we are so concentrated on giving single helpful instruction for teachers and parents, and the feedback we got from all over the world, because when people buying the course on Udemy, it's very, very cheap, it costs nothing. They are very satisfied with the course, and what we gathered from the feedback, for example, from the parents, this is really helpful to set up the treatment in home settings even, which is really great. And it's also helpful for teachers to help parents to start the treatment at home, which is really so important. So when, for example, we have new parents in my institute, when we accept a new child, the parents are coming and they're saying, you know, everything is ready. We have all done in the way you wanted. So just please come and check if it's correct. And usually it's done really perfectly. So the feedback we got, the comments we got are very really positive, and the results we can see are very nice. So we use it in different way to train new teachers and to help parents. So which is really nice.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dr. BUDZISKA. And then Professor Dillenburger just raised some of the cultural issues that were faced by ASMAHAN in terms of the traditional attitudes to sexual health education. So again, I encourage you to reach out to ASMAHAN if you have any further questions about her talk. But I would just like to take a minute to again thank the conference organizers. So thank you, Professor Dillenburger. Thank you, Dr. Denovi, and all of your team for organizing the 5th conference of the Center for Behaviour Analysis. It just is really testament to you that all of these speakers could come today and really align ourselves along this theme of systems and culture. And we're really grateful for you for organizing this and for allowing us the chance and the opportunity to share our results today. Thank you to each of our speakers. So thank you to Dr. BUDZISKA, thank you to Ms. ASMAHAN SALEH, and of course, thank you to Dr. Khawla for all your fantastic talks today. If any of you are interested in reaching out for slides and resources, please feel free to do so. I'm sure we're all very happy to share our resources. And I think that's it from all of us. So thank you all so much, and please enjoy the rest of your conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a great pleasure.
Thank you, Dr.
All
Kelly.
of you
Thanks so much.
here. Really, thank you so much, and giving us the possibility to share our experience. It's also wonderful. So thank you for everything.
So everyone go eat something now before Dr. Pat.
Yes.
Okay. See you later.
Yeah,
Bye.
see you soon. Bye.
Thank you all, and thank you, Chris, for your IT assistance today. Really appreciate it.